beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. It is the Neglected News Report. I'm your co-host, Scott Mitchell, here with my brother, Kevin.
Good afternoon.
And it's finally starting to cool down slowly but surely here. We're supposed to get this, mega storm here that's supposed to hit. Kevin told me it was supposed to cover about 3/4 of the U.S., about 2,500 miles or something.
Well, there's a hurricane coming up from Baja, California that's supposed to hit us here in Phoenix later today, and it's supposed to last all the way through Tuesday. And it's supposed to eventually blanket most of the southern part of the United States.
Hey, we've had more rain this summer than I can remember in a while.
Which is good.
Yeah. I wonder if they're going to make some kind of sci-fi channel to come up with some kind of a movie idea for this storm, kind of like Sharknado.
But you know why it's really good? The very same week we're having this storm, we were also told that Arizona's ready for a 400-year drought. And we used to have a group of Native Americans here in Phoenix 400 years ago, but
they're Indians.
Yeah, Indians. Okay, I was being PC. But they left 400 years ago, and many people think it was due to a drought. And we still have canals that run crisscross through Phoenix that was built by, what was it? Wasn't the Maricopas, was it? What was it?
It was the Anasazis, maybe?
Anasazis, Hohokam?
I don't know. We moved here in 1972. They were in the middle of a 100-year drought. And then I can remember it was the winter after I graduated high school, 1977-78 winter, we had 100-year, what they call 100-year floods. It rained all winter. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. What I want to know is, how do you know when Phoenix, Arizona is having a drought? It doesn't rain much
true.
here anyway.
You just know when it's not having a drought.
Now, I know the driest desert in the world is the Atacama Desert in Chile, and they've had less than an inch of rain in 500 years, I believe it is.
Yeah, I don't mind the rain. But my backyard is like a jungle right now. My dog went out there the other day to do his business and he got lost.
Yeah, you could get lost back there.
Yeah, I got to mow that. I've been having some troubles getting around over the last few weeks, but I'm going to mow it tomorrow before the rain. The rain's supposed to start. They said
later this afternoon.
No, it's actually I heard it's tomorrow morning after 11 a.m.
I just read something that
they pushed it up. Then
they said later today.
Oh my God!
I should have done my brakes this morning.
Ay. All right, I guess I'm going to have to put it off till next weekend because there's one thing you don't want to do here or anywhere is mow a lawn when it's wet.
No.
It's just not fun.
Nope. It doesn't go in the bag very well.
No, it doesn't. And it's more work than it's worth, really. But suffice it to say, the temperatures are getting cooler. I'd say inside a month and a half or so, it should be really comfortable here again. Well, what do we got today? Actually, Kevin wanted to devote the whole hour to a particular subject.
Well, I don't want to be, every once in a while I make these allusions to the New World Order. And for those of you out there who are aware of it or aren't aware of it or whatever, it takes on a conspiratorial flavor to it, but nonetheless, it doesn't make it any less true. I mean, I can give you, I don't know, 2 dozen politicians who've referenced it constantly. And I think that's the only way that you can make sense out of what's going on in our world today is by understanding that there is a grand plan. They do call it the plan. It's been called the plan and the plan and I can't think of the other term, but anyway, there is a call it an unseen hand, call it whatever you will, that actually moves this planet. And when you see, for instance, ISIS, who created ISIS? I mean, what is ISIS? How do they get their weapons? I'll tell you how they got their weapons. They got their weapons through Benghazi. That's how they got their weapons.
Yeah, there's just, I mean, okay. If the only reason for covering up Benghazi was to get Obama reelected, he's been reelected. You know?
Okay, Ambassador Stevens was in Benghazi. He's the ambassador. What's he doing in Benghazi? We don't even have an embassy in Benghazi. That was just a safe house.
It was a consulate.
It was okay. I don't even know if it was even at that level. But there's a lot of speculation. Okay, this is speculation, so you're not going to see it on any mainstream news. But there is speculation that he was literally running guns to the Syrian rebels, which is ISIS, to Syria.
On direct orders from the president.
Why do you think you see ISIS with M16s? You see them driving Humvees. You see them with all American hardware. Where do you think that came from? Some of it was left behind, they say, in Iraq, but I think more was, and they're fabulously well funded too. Don't be surprised if there's some American dollars in that funding as well. But anyway, what I'm getting at is sometimes the world doesn't work exactly the way it's shown, to us, we minions. I want to read you a speech that was given on April 27th, 1961 by John F. Kennedy. It was given at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. And it deals with the New World Order. He starts out by saying the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are as a people inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths and secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an unannounced need for increased security will be seized upon those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it is in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. Wasn't that what Obama called transparency? And he goes on, for we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy, his words not mine, that relies on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlines. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned. No rumor is printed. No secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support the administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people. For I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed. I not only could not stifle controversy among your readers, I welcome it. This administration intends to be candid about its errors, for as a wise man once said, an error does not become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We intend to accept full responsibility for our errors, and we expect you to point them out when we miss them. Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon created a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy, and that is why our press was protected by the First Amendment. The only business in America specifically protected by the Constitution, not primarily to amuse and entertain, not to emphasize the trivial and sentimental, not to simply give the public what it wants, but to inform, to arouse, to reflect, to state our dangers and our opportunities, to indicate our crises and our choices, to lead, mold, educate, and sometimes even anger public opinion. This means greater coverage and analysis of international news, for it is no longer far away and foreign, but close at hand and local. It means greater attention to improved understanding of the news as well as improved transmission. And it means finally that government at all levels must meet its obligation to provide you with the fullest possible information outside the narrowest limits of national security. And he finishes with this. And so it is to the printing press, to the recorder of man's deeds, the keeper of his conscience, the courier of his news, that we look for strength and assistance, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent. And he was assassinated a year and a half later after that speech. Now,
2.5.
A year and a half. What,
63.
63. Oh, that's right. It was that long. For some reason I was. And real quick, I want to read you this. This is a passage which is very, very similar to what I just read you, but it was summed up very eloquently in Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. That's what Kennedy was talking about.
And to sum up some stuff here that he kind of glossed over there in that speech, the methods by which they do this. I'm on the Wikipedia page for the Fabian Society. Fabian Socialism. It's a society that was created a little over 130 years ago in 1884, January 4th. And according to the Wikipedia page, their purpose is to advance the principles of socialism via gradualist and reformist means. In other words, behind the scenes. But I'm going to read something here. They have the purpose of the society is listed here too. It aims to promote greater equality of power, wealth, and opportunity, the value of collective action and public service, an accountable, tolerant, and active democracy, citizenship, liberty, and human rights, sustainable development, and multilateral international cooperation. Sound familiar?
Sounds like progressivism to me.
Does it sound like the world we're living in right now?
Sustainability. What is that? Agenda 21.
But this all sounds like the world nowadays. And this was 100. You cannot tell me there aren't people working behind the scenes, people.
The Fabians put their faith in evolutionary socialism rather than in revolution, as opposed to the Soviets who like the revolution, the violent part.
That's because the Soviets, the Russians are paranoid.
But some of the people that embodied this Fabian socialism are people that you wouldn't even expect. We've got George Bernard Shaw, who I'm going to talk about at length here shortly. George Bernard Shaw was a playwright, author. Bertrand Russell, another one. H.G. Wells, another one. These are all part of the Fabian socialists, and they believed that there should be a hierarchical is that word?
Yeah.
Elite that basically controls we the masses, we stupid animals, worthless eaters, call us what you will. And they really, really believe that, by the way. I'm going to read you some quotes from these people along with Margaret Sanger, by the way. Because these are the people, these are the unseen hand that Kennedy was talking about, along with bankers, along with your usual suspects, Rothschilds, Chases, all these people that started the Federal Reserve, Edward Mendel House, who you're going to learn about him today. What a great guy he was. But I want to start with some George Bernard Shaw. Now, this was a guy he was held up by all the progressives. He was a Fabian socialist, and his political views are downright scary. And then, not to mention his eugenics views. In case you don't know what eugenics is, it's basically the purification of the gene pool by whatever means necessary. It's typically sterilization and outright genocide is part of the eugenics movement. But listen to what he said about Stalin. Now, we all know, I hope we do, unless you go into public schools these days, that we know what a dictator, what a mass murderer Stalin was. Bigger than Hitler was, far bigger. Not quite as prolific as Mao, but nonetheless, he was a terrible, terrible human being. George Bernard Shaw loved him. Just loved the guy. He said at the invitation of Stalin, Shaw visited Soviet Union in 1931 at the age of 75. He became a loyal apologist for Stalinism, reporting the Gulag. Again, let me explain what the Gulag is. Prison. It's a prison you couldn't get out of. Not Dostoevsky, but Solzhenitsyn wrote about the Gulag archipelago. It was the most brutal. People died. They never got out. They died. They sent you to the Gulag, and you pretty much died.
He got out.
Yeah, he did. Solzhenitsyn got out moved to the United States. Oh, anyway, he became an apologist, George Bernard Shaw, for Stalin, and he reported that the Gulag. This is laughable if it wasn't so pathetic. He reported that the Gulag it was a kind of luxury vacation spa. Its large populations due solely to the difficulty of inducing the prisoners to leave. And he said, as far as I could make out, they could stay as long as they liked. On the last day of his pilgrimage, he says, tomorrow I leave this land of hope and return to our Western countries of despair.
And if you see video of this man, and we were watching a little bit of it before we came on the air, it's almost comical to see him talk about these things, whether it be by himself or in front of a crowd of people. But it's scary because there are people, he believes this stuff, and there are people that are just like him that believe it.
Well, the favorite form of government, it's not an economic model, it's a system of control for the one world. There's a new world order. People like Bertrand Russell and George Bernard Shaw is communism. That is their favorite. They love it. They think it's Jim Dandy. Although communism is never for the communists, it's always for the masses. So he doesn't ever plan on living.
To quote Andrew Wilkow, because
they're literally, I think they believe that they're not even part of the human race as we understand it. In 1933, he wrote a letter to the Manchester Guardian. There was a guy there named Malcolm Muggeridge who wrote an expose of Stalin's terror famine. He starved his people. Ukraine was millions of people died in Ukraine, and
fewer people, easier to manage.
George Bernard Shaw labeled it a lie and a slander, and he said the following. He published a 16,000-word apology for Stalin's mass murders, in which he expressed sympathy for the unfortunate commissar who found himself obliged to put a pistol in his pocket and with his own hand shoot disobedient workers, so that he might be more impressively the more impressively ask the rest of the staff whether they yet grasp the fact that orders are meant to be executed. So in other words, hey, if lowly masses don't want to obey rules, hey, pistol to the head is what you're going to get. And that's a good thing, because it's all about the collective, the Borg. Remember Jean-Luc Picard getting sucked up in the Borg? He lost his individuality. He lost everything.
And
lost his soul almost.
And they always put it in such terms and make it sound like it's a good thing.
Now, mind you, the reason we're bringing this up is this is the model. This is the model. When you hear about a one-world government, we're seeing it right now unfold right now in our country with the erasure of our borders. We're going to be one of 10 kingdoms. Call them what you will, but the Bible talks about that in Revelation. We're going to be, we'll call them trading zones or whatever. That's the first step to a new world order. And if you think it's going to be some sort of egalitarian democracy or one person, one vote, think again. No, the control structure is going to be a form of communism. It always has. And always look at the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917 as a testing ground.
And here's something else you got to look at. Of course, we want our society to be a good society. We want to contribute to society. We want it to be strong, and because it benefits us. But here's the way I look at things. The progressives, the socialists, believe that in order to achieve that, you have to think of the group first. The group has to come first. Screw the individual. But if they just realized that if they thought of the individual first and enabled him to set his skills, his creativity, his ability to make an income, if they set it loose, they would see that as he improved himself and made a life for himself and his family, that it would allow other people to do the same, and so forth and so on, and society would benefit that way, which is how it used to be.
That would be a very human thing to do, but these people were...
That's what I mean, I know.
These are terrible, yucky people. Excuse my, informal language here. These aren't good people. They're tyrannical, they're control freaks, they're atheists, first and foremost. Here's another George Bernard Shaw quote. In 1948, he says, "I am a communist, but not a member of the Communist Party. Stalin is a first-rate Fabian. Aha. I am one of the founders of Fabianism and as such very friendly to Russia." There you go. He just loved communism. He loved the Soviet control grid. He loved that whole, more dead the better. And let me tell you what, the Soviets, they made an art form out of murder.
Yep.
And let's go on to another one of his favorite subjects. Oh, he's just such a guy. Eugenics. In addition to socialism, Shaw was an advocate of eugenics. Extermination, this is his quote, this is him talking. Extermination must be put on a scientific basis if it is ever to be carried out and humanely and apologetically as well as thoroughly, he wrote. Let me read that again. Extermination must be put on a scientific basis if it is ever to be carried out humanely and apologetically as well as thoroughly. If we desire a certain type of civilization and culture, we must exterminate the sort of people who do not fit into it. In one public address recorded on March 5th, 1931, Shaw gave expression to the Nazi doctrine of, quote, unquote, life unworthy of life. He said, "You must all know half a dozen people at least who are no use in this world, who are more trouble than they are worth. Just put them there and say, 'Sir' or 'Madam.' Now, will you be kind enough to justify your existence?"
I can think of one person that falls in that category.
Hitler?
Him.
Well, did you see what he said?
Yeah,
He just put them there and say, "Sir or Madam, now will you be kind enough to justify your existence?"
And by the way, we've seen this video of him saying this.
It's matter of fact. Well, how do you answer that question? How do you justify your existence? I don't know. God put me here. That's my answer. And he goes, if you can't justify your existence, he goes on, if you're not pulling your weight, and since you won't, if you're not producing as much as you consume, or perhaps a little more, then clearly we cannot use the organizations of our society for the purpose of keeping you alive, because your life does not benefit us and can't be of very much use to yourself. I don't. Where do you go with that? The Nazis loved them. Unlike most eugenicists who recoiled in horror from the implications of eugenics after World War II, when the horrors of Nazism were exposed to the world, Shaw continued to advocate it, writing in 1948 that we should enslave a considerable class of persons who, according to him, cannot fend for themselves. Placed under tutelage superintendents and provided sustenance, such people, says Shaw, make good infantry soldiers and well-behaved prisoners. His prescription, reorganize their lives for them and do not prate foolishly about their liberty. He continued to advocate mass murder, calling it kindly but ruthless judicial liquidation. Not for murderers, but for criminals you cannot reform, career criminals, even those who commit petty crimes. Now, the Russians considered criminals basically anybody who didn't agree with their own servitude, pretty much. So this is one example of. Okay, real quick. He continued to advocate mass murder, calling it kindly but ruthless judicial liquidation. Okay, I already did that. In addition to recidivists, the death penalty should be applied, he wrote, to idiots and morons. Those are people of feeble minds, in other words. Do not punish them. Kill, 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 kill them, he said. Shah admitted that most of these people are quite incapable of committing a murder, but argued that the increase or decrease of crime is not the point at issue. They should be killed, according to Shah, simply because they are incapable of paying their way. Clarifying that he was advocating mass murder, Shah added that on this principle we shall liquidate many more human nuisances than at present if we are to weed the garden thoroughly.
Okay, do you remember about 2 years ago that video that was going around, 3 years ago, video that was going around, Glenn Beck was showing it, and others were, and it was of the FBI informant that infiltrated the Weather Underground. And he was let into the inner circle. He gained their confidence to the point where he was allowed into the inner circle, and he took part in a meeting where they said that there was going to be probably, in their estimation, about 25 million to 30 million people that would not go along with their, once they had their revolution, that would not go along with what they wanted to do, with their form of government, the way they wanted to run things. And they said those people would have to be eliminated. It's the same thing as with the Soviets. It's like they didn't agree with the government's bottom line. As a result, they were eliminated. They would say they'd have to be eliminated because they didn't agree with the government's bottom line. I mean, the Weather Underground is just another example of this kind of stuff.
Oh, you're talking about Bill Ayers talking about exterminating 25 million?
Yeah, 25, 30 million, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That just goes with communism. You're part of the collective. You're not. There's no individualism. There's no soul that goes with you when you die.
Once again, the distinction has to be made. Leftist political philosophy tends to go, it is basically all about government control to the point. The extreme is totalitarianism. Rightist philosophy is
anarchy.
Less government, but the extreme is anarchy. Neither one is good. And I'm not saying you should be in the middle. I think you should be right of center. Myself.
I've got some New World Order quotes. I love this. Just about everybody that's in power now has
Kevin's back, by the way.
Oh, I am back. Yes. Been drinking a lot of liquids today, trying to stay healthy here.
Yeah, and when you get to be our age, you got to watch the prostate.
Joe Biden, February 27th of this year, said the affirmative task before us is to create a new world order. Now, I'm repeating these because I want you to understand that I'm telling you their own words. I'm not making anything up. I'm not the conspiratorialist. These are their own words.
And most people are not going to think twice about that phrase because we heard it bandied about so much since George H. W. Bush ran in 1990 for president, or in 1988.
And speaking of which, this is a George Herbert Walker Bush quote. We will succeed. This is during the Gulf War, first Gulf War. We will succeed in the Gulf, and when we do, the world community will have sent an enduring warning to any dictator or despot, present or future, who contemplates outlaw aggression. The world can therefore seize this opportunity to fulfill the long-held promise of a new world order, where brutality will go unrewarded and aggression will meet collective resistance. Oh, you gotta love that. Collective resistance, man.
It's always beware when they use terms such as collective resistance, the good of the whole, those kind of terms.
And what he didn't accomplish the first Gulf War, his son did, W, in 2003. I was looking at that whole thing. I was for, after 9/11, I bought the whole thing. I bought we got to go in there. We got to get Osama bin Laden. Let's go to Afghanistan. We went to Afghanistan. We didn't get him right away, but we started giving it to the Taliban.
I was too.
Yeah. And then we went into Iraq. Then I started scratching my head. Well, what is the purpose here? Mm-hmm. And it took me probably 10 years after that, 2003. I didn't start waking up, maybe not quite 10 years, 10 years, until a couple years ago. I started understanding what it was all about. But anyway, I love this guy. The Rockefellers. They're huge in the New World Order. Huge. This was This quote was from 1983 by Representative Larry P. McDonald. He said, the drive of the Rockefellers and their allies is to create a one-world government combining super capitalism and communism under the same tent, all under their control. Do I mean a conspiracy? Yes, I do. I am convinced there is such a plot, international in scope, generations old in planning, incredibly evil in intent. And guess what? He was killed in a Korean Airlines disaster in 1983.
I remember that.
Right after he said that. So this is what JFK was talking about.
And there's talk that disaster was just to get him.
Yeah,
I've heard that.
Yeah, and here's a Richard Nixon quote.
Very recently, I've actually heard it.
Here's Richard Nixon in 1972. Each of us has the hope to build a new world order. It goes back farther than that, but here's Mikhail Gorbachev. We are moving toward a new world order, the world of communism. We shall never turn off that road.
When was that quote?
That was in 1987.
I believe he was supposed to be our friend then, wasn't he? Or shortly after that.
Well, we pretty much destroyed him. By 1987, we had pretty much decimated their economy, and it was just in free fall after that. But here's one, Henry Kissinger. Oh, but this is an evil, you know what? Henry Kissinger. See, I don't play games. Kissinger, I call them as they were. Kissinger was Secretary of State under Richard Nixon. So, he was a Republican, but it doesn't really matter. Republican, Democrat, who cares? They all put on a different mask whenever they need to. So he says, I think that Obama's task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created.
You got anybody as a big dude, Brzezinski?
Oh, I do. Hold on.
I was just asking.
Be patient. Be patient. Here's one. This is Strom Talbot, Deputy Secretary of State, said this in 1992. In the next century, nations as we know it will be obsolete. All states will recognize a single global authority. National sovereignty wasn't such a great idea after all. I can't make this stuff up. All right? I can't make this up. What are we seeing right now on our borders? We're seeing the erasure of our borders.
Trying to do it in the Ukraine too. Over in Europe and over there in Russia.
Oh, this one, Scott. I don't know if I want to go into this because there's so much controversy. Do you know who David Spangler was? Director of the UN Planetary Initiative when he talked about Lucifer?
No. Never heard of him.
He said, okay, what I'm going to read is, I'll just read it and I'll let you think whatever you want to. He said, what year was this? 2013. No one will enter the New World Order unless he or she will make a pledge to worship Lucifer. No one will enter the New Age unless he will take a Luciferian initiation. This is David Spangler. Note. This is a note. Spangler later claimed he did not say this, though in his past he has said many, many similar things to this. Contrary to what supporters have written, claiming one has not said something does not refute it. For example, it is documented that Spangler has said, Christ is the same force as Lucifer. Lucifer prepares man for the experience of Christhood. He is the great initiator. Lucifer works within each of us to bring us to wholeness, and as we move into a new age, each of us in some way is brought to that point which I term the Luciferic initiation, for it is an invitation into the new age. Actually, the complete quote is as follows. Lucifer comes to us as the final Luciferic initiation that many people now and in the days ahead will be facing, for it is an initiation into the new age. No one will enter the New World Order unless he or she will make a pledge to worship Lucifer. No one will enter the New Age unless he or she takes a Luciferian initiation. That's a big guy in the UN. Now, I can go on and on and on about that, but I don't want to. But true evil is David Rockefeller. We are on the verge of global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept the New World Order. That's what you're seeing. What do you think 9/11 was? That was the first. That was the first shoe to fall. That was the first major crisis. They're actually waiting for a suitcase nuke detonated in New York City, Washington, D.C., wherever. Oh, they would welcome that because that would be the reason for them to come in, the Hegelian dialectic, come in and create the solution.
Because what would happen is whoever's president, when something like that happens in this country, would put us under martial law. They'd, of course, say it's only temporary to allay everyone's fears, but it would become permanent. Because they'd start, it's incrementalism, folks. What was one of the principles, or one of the means by which the Fabian socialists use to advance socialism? Gradualism.
Mm-hmm.
Or incrementalism. Little by little. It's like it's the old exactly, progressivism, which is what liberalism is called nowadays. It's like the old thing about putting the frog in a pot of water and gradually raising the heat onto him, underneath him. Before he knows it, and he's boiling to death, and it's too late.
And neither party is immune to it. Republicans as well as Democrats have progressives in it. The first progressive really was Teddy Roosevelt, president.
Yep.
Then Woodrow Wilson took it to an art form.
It's amazing with Teddy Roosevelt, because he was known as the trust buster. He wanted to break up all these monopolies, right? Because he didn't want any one company or any two companies to have control over any one industry, yet he wanted to control the whole government.
Yep. Here's another beauty by our friend Hank Kissinger. He says, today America would be outraged if UN troops entered Los Angeles to restore order. You're damn right they would be, as well as they should. Mm-hmm. Tomorrow they will be grateful. This is especially true if they were told that there was an outside threat from beyond, whether real or promulgated, that threatened our very existence. It is then that all peoples of the world will plead to deliver them from this evil. The one thing every man fears is the unknown. When presented with this scenario, individual rights will be willingly relinquished for the guarantee of their well-being granted to them by the world government. Oh, boy.
And what is the old quote by Benjamin Franklin? Anyone willing to give up a little bit of liberty for a little bit of security deserves neither.
And this quote by the man who coined the term New World Order, H.G. Wells. Bet you didn't know that. He was a Fabian socialist as well. He said the New Deal, which was that was implemented during FDR's days, during the Great Depression, which some people think was orchestrated, but the New Deal is plainly an attempt to achieve a working socialism and avert a social collapse in America. It is extraordinarily parallel to the successive policies and plans of the Russian experiment. Americans shirk the word socialism, but what else can we call it? So it just goes on and on and on. Yeah, I don't know. You think we've given them enough?
I think it's enough.
Oh, Alinsky. Oh, rules. Yeah, one more by Saul Alinsky, the author of Rules for Radicals that Obama follows to the T. Who, and by the way, the foreword was dedicated to Lucifer. The what did he call him? The first great rebel. I think it was
something like that.
Yeah, the first great. Oh no, revolutionary. That was it. The first great revolutionary. Russians the commies just love that. Just love that whole revolutionary thing. He said, we must believe that it is the darkest before the dawn of a beautiful new world. We will see it when we believe it. Now look at this. I love it's always darkest before the dawn. Notice Lucifer was the light, the God, the angel of light.
Yeah.
Lucifer, light. And he says, it's always darkest before dawn. See the allusion to the light? See all the enlightened. I mean, when you're smart, when you're informed, you're enlightened.
And by the way, I forget what the verse in the Bible is, but it says, for Satan can appear as an angel of light in order to deceive even the very elect, to paraphrase it.
Yeah. So yeah, those are just quotes of New World, the New Worlders, and again, these people have the same ideologies as George Bernard Shaw, who we just talked about. This is a great one. You know who Zbigniew Brzezinski was? He was what was it? Jimmy Carter's Secretary of State? What was he? What was his...
I think he was just a national security advisor.
Okay, here's a guy that not Zbigniew Brzezinski, Ron Paul, who I've learned to like certain aspects of, because I've become, as the government clamps down on more and more power, I revere my liberties a lot more. So that's why I have a libertarian streak to me.
He was United States National Security Advisor to Jimmy Carter from 77 to 81.
Okay, it starts out by Zbigniew Brzezinski made a speech. Oh, boy, I don't have the exact date. But what he said was, he's a New World Order architect. He said, it is easier to kill 1 million people than control 1 million people. Many are alarmed at that statement, but for the wrong reasons. And hence the analysis that goes on. What he really meant is not much better than what it sounded like he meant. I'll read this to you. On November 17th, 2008, Zbigniew Brzezinski, a New World Order architect and a founder of the Rockefeller, there we go, there's that name again, controlled Trilateral Commission addressed Chatham House, the British counterpart of the American Council of Foreign Relations. There's another one. We haven't even talked about them.
I know.
And said, I once put it rather pungently, and I was flattered that the British Foreign Secretary repeated this as follows. Namely, in early times, it was easier to control 1 million people. Literally, it was easier to control 1 million people than physically to kill 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people. It is easier to kill than to control. When this statement arrived on the internet a few months later, it was widely circulated with shock and alarm. It certainly was an attention getter, and it was assumed by many to be proof that Brzezinski and his fellow New World Order elitists were calling for the killing of millions of people. Fortunately, some of the news sources carried a link to the audio recording of his speech, so it was possible to listen to his entire presentation to see if he really did say what was attributed to him. Unfortunately, not many of the internet dispatchers took the time to listen. If they had, they would have realized that Brzezinski was merely making an honest and accurate assessment of historical fact. Like it or not, in modern times, it is easier to kill than to control 1 million people. So why the hoopla? That, however, is not the end of the story. When we carefully listen to the rest of the speech, we realize Brzezinski is saying that control of the masses is the real objective of the New World Order. And he is lamenting the fact that it is so difficult now that almost every nation and culture has become politically aware. He recalls those days gone by when this was not so, when the masses neither knew nor cared about politics and could be controlled simply by force of arms and economic coercion. Under those conditions, controlling people was easier, he says. Now, however, when almost everyone believes they should participate in their own political destiny via the vote, the process has become much more difficult. And that's what he meant by that quote. He's saying that really to change, it's easier to kill 1 million than to change 1 million people's minds.
Going back to what the Weather Underground talked about, going back to Stalin. I mean, think about it, folks. I mean, the reason why a lot of people are not able to believe some of the things we talk about and refuse to is because they figure after all 2 world wars in the last century and all the chaos and everything that we've had and that we've overcome to this point, that it can't happen again.
Oh, it's planned to happen again. What's his name? Pike. He was a 33rd degree Mason in the 19th century. He talked about the 3 world wars that were going to be fought in the 20th and possibly the 21st century. And we've already fought the 2, and we're probably going to fight the 3rd if you're paying attention to to the world right now. But, yeah, I don't know.
There's so many flashpoints across the world right now.
Yeah. Oh, here's another beauty of mine. Aldous Huxley. Gosh, these intellectual elites, he wrote Brave New World. And here's a quote from him. He says, these guys love totalitarian states. He says, a really efficient totalitarian state would be one in which the all-powerful executive of political bosses and their army of managers control a population of slaves who do not have to be coerced because they learn to love their servitude. To make them love it is the task assigned in present-day totalitarian states to ministries of propaganda, newspaper editors, and school teachers. The greatest triumphs of propaganda have been accomplished not by doing something, but by refraining from doing something. Great is truth, but still greater from a practical point of view is silence about truth. There you go. That's the occult for you. The occult typically just means the unseen. Mm-hmm. And that's what they do. They just, the truth, they hide the truth. The truth, you're not privileged to hear the truth. You have to find it out. And that's what Jesus said. people perish for lack of knowledge. Was that Christ? I believe.
Yeah.
I believe.
Or no, actually, that was in one of the Psalms, I think.
Was it?
I think so.
My people perish for lack of knowledge. And to be honest with you, I couldn't quite make sense of the world. As I got older, I couldn't understand why things played out the way they did. And it wasn't until I really came to grips that there is good and evil in this world. There is a war going on in another realm, which I talked about.
Yeah, it's Old Testament.
Ecclesiastes.
Hosea 4:6.
Yeah, which I talked about in Ecclesiastes. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities.
Oh, you said Ephesians.
Ephesians. I'm sorry. What did I say? Ecclesiastes.
Ecclesiastes.
Principalities against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. It wasn't until I understood that passage that I got it, that I figured it out, because nothing made sense. The world was upside down. Black was white, white was black, up was down, and down was up. Nothing made sense. In fact, when you watch the news today, you got to flip that news 180 degrees to come at the truth.
And by the way, is in that Ephesians passage, those things that are named principalities, what are they again?
What's that?
What are those in the Ephesians? What are they? What are the principalities? What else?
I'll read it again. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places.
He's talking about spiritual warfare there, folks. As a matter of fact, I believe principality is a type of demon, if I remember correctly from when I heard someone discuss this once before.
As it is above, it is below. That's a paraphrase as well. Is that John? Oh, I have to get my
I'm not sure.
my act together with what books things come out of. But that's what they're saying. They're saying if we have turmoil in this world, in the real, in the here, I don't mean the real because the spiritual world is more real than this is. But if we're having if we're having problems in the natural, that means they're having it in the supernatural. Mm-hmm. That means there's warfare going on. Michael and Gabriel are busy fighting, in the spiritual realm.
Yep.
So, but I couldn't make sense of the world until I started looking at it biblically. Sorry, it just made no sense. It was just a bunch of hodgepodge. They would, these people, a lot of, atheists would like you to believe that life is just nothing but a disjointed series of events that, that it's just chaos.
Like creation.
Yeah, it's just chaos. There's no rhyme or reason for it. You just get over it. Don't try to understand it because you can't possibly understand it. They understand it. They understand it very well. Mm-hmm. These are what we call the puppet masters. Hey, you want to hear something? Before we got on the air, Scott and I were listening to just a great gal. She's just something. She'll bring light into any room. That would be Margaret Sanger.
Yeah, it was from a 1957 Mike Wallace interview. And by the way, in the first 2 minutes, he plugged Philip Morris cigarettes about 4 times.
Now, Margaret, she's another part of this whole, Luciferian one world government. She's for some reason has been shielded by the powers that be for years as far as her views. She was just for women's health care, birth control, abortion rights, and so forth. Not so much. Mm-hmm. No. Here's a quote from Margaret Sanger. And again, I'm sorry I'm reading a lot of these quotes, but I don't want you to think that I'm just making this stuff up. This is right out of their mouth. Real
quick, and if you still by this point don't know who she is, she was a founder of Planned Parenthood.
She said, this is just a single line, the most merciful thing that the large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it. Okay, here's chapter 6 in a book she wrote called Woman and the New Race. The wickedness of creating large families. Here, Sanger argues that because the conditions of large families tend to involve poverty and illness, it is better for everyone involved if a child's life is snuffed out before he or she has a chance to pose difficulties to its family. We should apply a stern and rigid policy of sterilization and segregation to that grade of population whose progeny is tainted or whose inheritance is such that objectionable traits may be transmitted to offspring. In other words, I think Hitler pretty much took that to the next level with the Aryan race. He attempted to pretty much exterminate the rest, including homosexuals, even though, never mind. And she basically then spells out what she really meant. What she meant by undesirables, those were in the days they called it back then Negroes. Why do you think there's so many Planned Parenthoods in the bad area, ghettos or what have you? Here's what she said regarding birth control and abortions in the dealing with the black problem, the Negro problem. That's what she called it. She said, we should hire 3 or 4 colored ministers, preferably with social service backgrounds and with engaging personalities. The most successful educational approach to the Negro is through a religious appeal. We don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever comes to any other more rebellious members. That was a letter she had written in 1939 to Dr. Clarence Gamble. I don't know who he was, but obviously he had similar views. And it was described in a book written called A Woman's Body, Woman's Right, A Social History of Birth Control of America. So, she talks about the feeble-minded. Who are these people? Who are they? Your judge, jury, and executioners? I mean, who decides who's feeble-minded? I know several people who have Downs children, and they're the most lovable, kind people you will ever want to meet. I'm talking about those with Downs themselves. And the parents, if they had ever thought prior of aborting that baby, would just that thought wouldn't even be in their mind after having these children. So, yeah,
it's just I don't even know where to start on this. I had a few thoughts on it. First of all, like Kevin said, who are they to decide who's feeble-minded, who should be, First of all, no one should decide who's going to live and die.
Heck, I didn't even like putting my dog down at 16 years of age a few weeks ago. I had no choice.
I mean, I had mine 2 years ago.
Everyone kept saying to me, because he was dragging his back foot for a while and he couldn't hear too well, couldn't see as well as he should be seeing, that I had to put him down. I said, no, he's eating a full bowl of kibble every day, and he's happy. He does his routine. Who am I? I can't play God. And that's with my dog. Who are you to play God with a human being?
It's because we don't want imperfections in our society.
Well, that's not my call. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I know. But look at the society we live in. It worships perfection. It worships beauty. It worships, come on. It really does.
It does. Well, I would suggest to you that a sleeve of tattoos and body piercings is not beauty. And that's what we find beautiful these days.
But they try to convince us that it is.
And like our music as well?
Yeah, exactly.
What's beauty?
I have these guys I work with. They know that I run an internet radio station, and they keep giving me suggestions on songs to play. We'll be driving around to lunch and say, "Oh, you should play this on your station." It's like, it's just crap. They especially get on me when a Rihanna song comes on, and I'm sorry, I don't like Rihanna. She's a little tramp.
Well, not only that, but just do a search on her one day and see what her beliefs are.
Well, I don't really care to. I don't have that kind of time.
Well, and we could have a whole show about Luciferians in the entertainment community or the fashion industry. I mean, it goes on and on and on. You're totally bombarded with images.
See, this is where I'm going to miss Joan Rivers. Because you have her and Melissa on the red carpet at all these awards shows, and you see the beautiful people walking down the red carpet, and they're sitting there making fun of them. I'm going to miss that. I really am going to miss that.
You can make fun of those people because they take themselves so seriously. They couldn't believe that you would actually be making fun of them because they are the quote-unquote beautiful people.
You got to give that to Joan Rivers. She was always she always spoke her mind.
Loved her. I was listening to a show the other day. Isn't that the third celebrity that recently just passed away?
It was Robin Williams, her, and I don't remember who the
wasn't Betty White. They were making a joke out of that the other day. She didn't die, actually. She dyed her hair.
In bed.
Yes.
She died in bed.
Yes, she died in bed. That was the big joke.
Unbelievable.
But yeah, these are the people. I wanted to. I still have tons more. We don't have much time. We only got about 5 minutes left. I just wanted you to understand that the way things are is not because of randomness. This is not random. There are literally people on this planet whose job is to implement the plan, or the great work is the other term for it. That's the great work. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to throw my 2 cents, my biblical 2 cents in. I see things really as good and evil. I see Christ, I see God as being good, and I see the devil, also known as Lucifer, known as the dragon, known as the serpent, the snake, call him what you will. 2 different opposing sides. Call it the yin and the yang if you're an atheist, whatever you want to call it. I refuse to call it that. I think the plan of the New World Order is Luciferian.
And also, keep this in mind. You got to remember this, folks. This is very important. Satan is not, or Lucifer, whatever you want to call him, is not. He's opposite of God, but he's not equal to God. He's not equal and opposite. He's opposite because he was created by God. He's the creation. I call him Lucifer instead of Satan because I have easier time conceptualizing him. I can imagine him being the beautiful angel in heaven who rebelled against God and being cast out of heaven. I can conceptualize. Satan's has had so many different personifications over thousands of years, different depictions of who he was, what he, I just rattled off a couple. I think Scorpion's even one, dragon, serpent, whatever. I have an easier time in my mind seeing Lucifer. I can see him as the light, the bearer of light. And I can understand how your smarty pants, George Bernard Shaw's, would love the idea of enlightenment and Luciferian, how he was just giving Adam and Eve wisdom in the Garden of Eden and so forth, and that the real bad guy was God and that he was the real good guy. I can see these scientific pencil necks buying into that. But to carry that further, God is nothing but pure good. Satan, I continue to say Satan because I have no problem conceptualizing or visualizing it. He is pure evil, or dark, basically lightness, darkness. What is the interesting thing about light? You can go into the most pitch black room and light a match or a candle, and you can still see that flame. You cannot add darkness to it to get rid of it, to extinguish it. The only thing that can happen is light can do away with the darkness. And we have to be the light, And, a lot of these, your typical atheist said, well, if God is love, then why does he condemn man to hell? Well, he gives man the choice. And by the time you get cast down there, just like Lucifer, you have denied him. You've just said, okay, I don't, he's given you every opportunity to go the opposite way, and you just haven't. He's got no choice. Yeah, because he can't think about this. If heaven is a perfect place, which I believe it is, how can you have people go to heaven that don't believe in you and are actually are quote unquote tainted? You can't have that presence in heaven. And people spend their lives trying to perfect themselves, trying to become perfect. You're not going to do it. I heard my old singles pastor Darren once put it this way: when you're a child of God, he sees you as perfect while he's in the process of perfecting you. I like it. Anyway, guys, that wraps up another show. Be sure and join us next week here at... Oh, one more thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead. This is a quote. This is regarding ISIS. And what was it? Was it Proverbs? I forget. Well, anyway, Christ says, oh boy, what's the exact words? If you deny me,
chances are you love death. That's a terrible, terrible.
You posted on Facebook.
Synopsis. It's just if you deny me, if you don't believe in me, you probably chances are you love death, and that's ISIS for you. Yep.
Anyway, guys, we'll see you next week. We'll be here at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Hopefully, we'll be working on the website once the weather cools down, and it seems like toward the end of the year things kind of slow down around here when the summer's not around. We'll work on the website. We'll get some content up there. But be sure and check out the rebroadcast Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 p.m. 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Phoenix Underground Radio, and check out the radio station the rest of the year.
I'm going to start planting my vegetable garden here in a couple weeks.
Oh, I'm going to plant mine probably at the end of September, first week of October.
Liberty Garden.
All right, guys, we'll see you later.